When a man walked into Karen's cafe, wearing a red hat with a polarizing slogan, she thought asking him to leave was the right choice to protect her business. She had no idea he would soon hold the power to upend her life and force her to confront the hidden biases she didn't know she had. What happened next will shock you. But let's start at the beginning. Karen, a 40-year-old cafe owner, prided herself on creating a warm, inviting space for her suburban clientele. Her cafe wasn't just a business, it was a sanctuary, a place where locals could find comfort, civility, and connection. Karen took her role seriously, carefully curating every detail to maintain an atmosphere of harmony. Her regulars appreciated the sense of safety she fostered, and Karen valued their loyalty above all. One sunny afternoon, the cafe hummed with its usual patrons, neighbors chatting over steaming cups, a student tapping away at a laptop, and the faint clinking of teaspoons against porcelain. The rhythmic buzz was interrupted by the cheerful chime of the doorbell. A tall black man, James Wilson, stepped inside wearing a striking red MAGA cap. The slogan, bold and unmistakable, drew immediate attention. Karen felt her chest tighten. To her, that hat represented division and aggression, values antithetical to her cafe's ethos. As James calmly approached the counter and ordered a latte, Karen's eyes flickered to her regulars. Murmurs of unease rippled through the space. Customers exchanged concerned glances. Karen, ever sensitive to the mood of her patrons, felt compelled to act. After a moment of deliberation, she stepped out from behind the counter and approached James, her expression firm, yet courteous. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice steady but authoritative. "I think it'd be better if you took your coffee to go. That hat is making my customers uncomfortable." James looked up from his seat by the window, his face calm but questioning. "I'm just here for a latte," he replied evenly. "I don't see why my hat should be a problem." Karen folded her arms, her resolve hardening. "This is my cafe," she said. "I have the right to create an atmosphere that aligns with my values. I'm asking you to leave." James held her gaze for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stood, took his coffee, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he glanced back at Karen, his eyes sharp and lingering, as though committing her face to memory. As the door closed behind him, Karen exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and vindication. To her, the decision was clear-cut. She had defended the sanctity of her cafe's peace. Yet, as she returned to the counter, a faint unease tugged at her, a question left unspoken but insistent, lingering in the quiet murmurs of the room. The next morning, Karen opened her inbox to find an email from the property management company that owned her cafe's building. It was short and to the point, requesting her attendance at an urgent meeting with the new regional operations director. The message lacked specifics, but Karen assumed it was just another routine update about leases or maintenance. She didn't think much of it and replied promptly, confirming her attendance. 2 days later, Karen arrived at the corporate office, dressed sharply in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt. Her polished appearance reflected her confidence. As the owner of one of the area's most beloved cafes, she felt secure in her position. The business was thriving, and she was proud of what she'd built. She expected the meeting to be nothing more than a formality. As she stepped into the conference room, her confident demeanor wavered. Seated at the head of the long table was James Wilson, the man she had confronted and asked to leave her cafe just 2 days prior. He wasn't wearing the red MAGA hat that had sparked their interaction, but Karen recognized him immediately. Her stomach dropped. "Good morning, Ms. Carter," James said smoothly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." Karen swallowed hard, and forced a polite smile. "Good morning," she murmured, sinking into the chair. Her pulse quickened as she avoided his gaze, unsure how much he remembered or intended to bring up. James introduced himself formally as the new regional operations director, responsible for overseeing all Café properties in the district. His tone was professional, his demeanor calm and unreadable. "I've recently taken charge of this district," he explained, "and I like to begin by familiarizing myself with each location and its operations." Karen nodded mechanically, her mind racing. Did he recognize her? Had their encounter at the café reached the higher-ups? She scrutinized his words, searching for any hidden intent. But James maintained an air of professional detachment. He seamlessly transitioned into discussing sales targets, lease agreements, and customer experience metrics. As the meeting progressed, Karen couldn't shake her discomfort. While James refrained from addressing their previous encounter, his poised demeanor unsettled her. She couldn't tell if his apparent lack of acknowledgement was genuine or calculated. Each word he spoke seemed measured, and each glance felt deliberate, leaving Karen to wonder if this meeting was as routine as it seemed, or if it was the prelude to something far more consequential. A week later, Karen's carefully maintained sense of control was shaken when James Wilson made an unannounced visit to her café. The moment he walked through the door, her staff, recognizing him as the new regional operations director, snapped into action. Their nervous energy filled the space as they rushed to ensure everything was perfect. In the back office, Karen was going over inventory when one of her baristas hurried in, wide-eyed and breathless. "He's here," they whispered urgently. Karen's heart skipped a beat. She quickly straightened her blazer, plastered a practiced smile on her face, and walked out to greet him. "Mr. Wilson, welcome. It's a pleasure to see you here," she said brightly, extending her hand. James turned to face her, his expression calm, but laced with a steely undertone. He shook her hand firmly, but didn't return her smile. "Nice to see you again, Ms. Carter," he replied, his tone pointed and deliberate. Karen felt the blood drain from her face as her smile faltered. "I remember our last interaction quite vividly," James continued, lowering his voice so only Karen could hear. "You made it very clear that I wasn't welcome here. It makes me wonder how many other customers have experienced that kind of treatment under your management." Karen's stomach dropped. The memory of their encounter 2 weeks earlier came rushing back, her judgment of his MAGA hat now glaringly out of place. I didn't mean anything personal," she stammered, her voice shaky. "It was just the hat and the atmosphere I was trying to maintain." James raised an eyebrow, his gaze unwavering. "You judged me based on an accessory," he said, his voice measured but firm. "That's not the kind of atmosphere I want associated with this café, or any of the others in this district." Karen's cheeks burned with embarrassment. I didn't realize," she began, her words trailing off. "That's the problem," James interrupted, his voice cutting through her excuses. "You didn't stop to consider who I was or why I was here. You saw a stereotype, not a customer." Karen stood frozen, her mind racing for a way to salvage the situation. Around them, the café buzzed with its usual energy, oblivious to the tension simmering in the conversation. James took a step back, glancing around the café before meeting her eyes again. "We'll be discussing this further," he said with finality. "For now, I'll observe." Karen nodded weakly, watching as James moved to a table. Her sense of authority felt shaken, replaced by the creeping awareness that she had made a grave misstep, one she might not easily recover from. In the weeks that followed, Karen found herself navigating an experience that was both humbling and eye-opening. At James's insistence, she enrolled in intensive customer service and implicit bias training. The sessions were challenging, forcing Karen to confront uncomfortable truths about her assumptions and the way they influenced her management style. At times, she felt defensive, even frustrated. But as the weeks went on, a sense of clarity emerged. She began to understand how her biases, however unintended, could undermine the very welcoming atmosphere she claimed to value. Meanwhile, James used the incident as a catalyst for broader change. Recognizing the importance of addressing these issues on a systemic level, he introduced mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff across the district. His message was clear. Every cafe in the region would prioritize creating genuinely inclusive spaces where all customers felt valued and respected. He emphasized that a warm and welcoming environment wasn't just about decor or smiles. It was about intention and action. For Karen, the process was transformative. As the training sessions progressed, she realized that her role as a cafe owner wasn't just about maintaining a physical space. It was about fostering a community. Determined to turn her misstep into a meaningful change, Karen began reaching out to local community organizations. She collaborated with them to host events that celebrated inclusivity and diversity, such as cultural showcases, charity drives, and dialogue nights. These initiatives not only brought in new customers, but also enriched the cafe's atmosphere, making it a hub for connection and understanding. Months later, James made another unannounced visit to Karen's cafe. This time, the air between them was markedly different. Karen greeted him warmly, her confidence tinged with genuine respect. The changes in the cafe were evident. The staff appeared more engaged, the customer base was more diverse, and the atmosphere felt truly inviting. "Thank you for giving me a chance to grow," Karen said earnestly, as James prepared to leave. James smiled, his expression both kind and knowing. "We all have room to grow," he replied. "The question is whether we're willing to take the first step." As James walked out, Karen felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her cafe had evolved into something greater than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was a space where everyone, no matter who they were or what they wore, could feel truly welcome.